I recognized, shortly after my divorce that I was chaos inside, that I didn't know what safety felt like.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me. My name is Reesa and I'm your host. We are talking to real families about real stories here on The Real Family Eats, where we've got food for thought and thoughtful food. So let's eat. Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining me. Today I have the lovely Tiffany joining me. Hi Tiffany, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Reesa. It's really just such an honor and a pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'm so excited to chat about your story and chat about your recipe as well. But before we get started, for anybody who doesn't know you, can you introduce yourself for us?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Tiffany O'Hearn. I am in Massachusetts, in like the western part of the state there, and I am here, to use my voice. I do an awful lot of podcasting and speaking. I am an energy healer as well. And so I work with, individuals who really are ready to take that bold step, to come back home to themselves, right? And want to transmute these deep wounds that we have, these traumas that we have, that we all have, right? But it's now is the time. Now is the time. And through all of my podcasting, speaking, writing. I have a book coming up, and all the ways that I can to get out and use my voice and to help guide others to know that they are enough, and that, it's only a matter of coming back home to self to realize how divinely perfect we are and to move forth, right? Because we all lead with love, or that's the hopeful intention. And so, how do we connect back to self, to connect back to that love, to bring it back to humanity? Because we are, we're a community and we're all connected.
Wonderful. Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that mission, that project, if you will. I heard you mention kind of a book. So, this is a perfect segue then into what I call the shameless plug section. So, shamelessly share with us, where can people find you? What's the name of the book? How can
Sure.
we find out everything about Tiffany?
Yeah, yeah. So I can be found on Instagram and TikTok under Heart in Soul Healing, because you cannot have your soul without your heart, right? There needs to be a connection there. So Heart and Soul Healing. And I post all sorts of, reels and whatever I share, as far as I'm concerned, it could answer someone's prayers just as much as what other people can share are certainly an answer to my prayers. So it's really in that giving and receiving energy. I'm on Facebook under Tiffany O'Hearn, and my website is www.heartandsoulhealing.com. And it was a collaboration for a book that will be coming out this spring. And it was a chapter, and it just poured out of me. And right now I have, a full book ready and willing to be written. I'm manifesting,
Mhm.
the opportunity with which to do so, and outside of that, I'm creating right now, I'm in the throes of creating a community for really for soul embodied, healers to come about, and then, these beautifully divined um searchers is the word that I'm going with, but that's not the title in which we'll seek it. But right, we're all here to kind of help. And so I'm creating this community sort of as a bridge to, because there's so many different ways to heal, and mine is not the only way, and I don't want it to be the only way, right? But how can we highlight other beautiful, wonderful healers who are ready to work with, individuals such as yourself, that are ready to take that bold step inward. And so even if you just want to look at it from the outside, right? And so that is in the works. Additionally, I'm creating a mastermind for, individuals that just want to connect. I'm really just about being a bridge and a conduit to as many people, that are as, soul centered, and have that desire to be the light within the world that we so desperately need.
Wow, that sounds incredibly powerful. And like you said, such a needed space for folks that are out there, kind of
Yeah.
boots on the ground, doing that hard work and really trying to help our community and our world, really, to be able to heal and live kind of a better, more thriving, successful lives. That's so cool.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Okay, so what recipe are you sharing with us today, and why did you choose that one?
Okay, I love this question. So, additionally, outside of my healing work, I also do some nutrition at a. It's called the Mental Health Association, but I work with individuals with TBIs, and so I go in and really try to help to infuse how important nutrition is. And something that always comes up is fruit. And I often will say, because if you hear me talk, you think that I probably sell fruit, and I don't sell fruit. I have no affiliation with fruit, but I just love fruit because what I know about fruit is this: it unites us. And if you don't believe me, try having a conversation over a bowl of fruit, a hard conversation over a bowl of fruit, and it will change the energies of your conversation.
Mm.
So the recipe is a smoothie. Because for me,
Hmm.
smoothies are a great way to infuse all of this goodness, not just nutrition, right? But if we think about how fruit is made, right? We need the sun in order to grow fruit. What does the sun have in it? Well, vitamin D. What is something that makes us really feel good inside is having a copious amount of vitamin D, right? So from our mind, body, and spirit, fruit really helps to connect us. How is fruit? There are three things that we need to grow fruit, right? We talked about the sun. We also need the rain, and we also need the soil where we get all of these nutrients, right? If we think about nature, nature is just a place for love. And so when we can eat fruit, right, that is from a space and place of love, it only amplifies that radiance within us. And a lot of times we try to make smoothies, and I see people do it all the time, and they're adding all of these things, and it's really in the simplicity of a smoothie that really helps. My daughter she loves smoothies, and most days she comes home and she's like, Mama, I need fruit, I need a smoothie. And you just watch the transformation inside, right? I'm taking a very,
Hmm.
interesting approach to smoothies, but I promise you the next time you have either this smoothie or another one or a piece of fruit, it's an invitation just to connect in for 1 minute and see how it helps you transform. Because there is nothing sweeter than the taste of fruit to our tongue. And also our bodies know exactly what to do with it. So it's okay. And so the smoothie recipe, pardon me, is a strawberry banana smoothie, and it calls for 1.5 cups of frozen strawberries, one banana, and a half cup of frozen avocado, with also a half cup of almond milk or coconut milk. I will say, trying to make a smoothie without a banana is just not going to be the same thing. That banana really help to cultivate this really creamy experience that you wouldn't get otherwise. It helps to like stabilize all the flavors. I don't really know what else. The avocado is also because avocados are one of the most beautiful, foods. They're actually linked to like the nutrients of a mother's breast milk. That doesn't mean give your child avocado and not breast milk, but it's just how
Hmm.
uniquely divine that fruit really is. And that will also help, if we're having, let's say if we're diabetic and we don't want to have all of that fruit, it also helps to kind of hold off that insulin response as well as keep us fuller longer. And I like to use coconut milk myself because it is the least amount of ingredients in the most impactful amount of nutrition.
Yeah, I love that. And what's so interesting is because both of my children, they had, and it's a whole story, but they had kind of a failure to thrive. And so they're very much on that high fat diet for quite some time. And so avocado has been a staple in our home for a long time, but I've actually never put it in a smoothie. So I absolutely love this and I'm excited to try it.
Excellent. Yeah, it definitely amplifies, just the goodness of it all. And again, frozen fruit is one of the best things that we can stock our freezer with, I find, because it's so inexpensive and you're not wasting it
Mm.
because it's in the freezer. Whereas a lot of times we'll buy a big, we'll go to the grocery store and be like, I'm on my, nutritious bandwagon. I'm gonna buy all the fruit. And then by Friday, we're like, time to get rid of all the fruit that we didn't eat, right? So frozen fruit is
Yeah.
just, yeah, it's a really affordable way to have a lot of fruit. And like I provide it in my daughter's lunch all the time because by the time she gets to school and eats it, it's perfectly thawed enough for her, and she gets delicious mango and pineapple and strawberries and blueberries and cherries and all the things. And I think it's that invitation to like I get super excited about fruit. Can you tell?
Yes, I absolutely can. And it's palpable and I'm excited now too. And what I love
It's
is putting it in there, even packing it as a snack, right? For our kids, that being able, like you said, put it in there frozen. You don't need to do much and send it with them. And by the time lunchtime rolls around, they're able to actually eat it. You're absolutely right. And that probably is thought at that point. And so that's a really great parents, again, hot tip, right? Taking some of these tips from our kids to help them, kind of live the best life that we can have them live. And I think that's what so many of us parents is to just trying to do, make thriving
Right,
humans.
right. Yeah. And what better to fuel their nutrition? And my own, I always put frozen fruit in my lunch too. And then by the time I have it, it's ready to go. And it just kind of tops up that, that element of, goodness within you, right? While you're eating it. And our bodies crave sugar. We need glucose. We need it constantly. And fruit is such a great way to do it because a lot of times we reach for more processed things that certainly don't necessarily help us, in that mind, body,
Mm-hmm.
spirit or soul connection.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, awesome. So am I just putting everything kind of in the blender and then going to town?
So yes and no. So ideally, you want to put the banana, this is how I do it. And I've made a lot of smoothies. I put in, the banana first so that the blender kind of has a space to go. And I like to put the smaller, or the bigger chunks in first. And then when it comes to the liquid, you really just want to add some. And if it's stuck, if it's not really blending, it's just an invitation to add a little bit more liquid. I don't know that there's always, like a half cup is going to be always the satisfying amount, right? Because it depends on how much you're making
Mm.
too. So, first, foremost, banana, and then the strawberries, and then the milk, and then set it to blend, or pardon me, the avocado as well. I'd probably put the avocado on top of the strawberries because the strawberries are more thick, right, in nature. And then, you just set it to blend until it has that consistency that, that you really desire. And the great thing is you can just sample it as you go. You're not going to break anything here.
Perfect. And so I'm doing one of those, upside down. And so it sounds like if I'm hearing you correctly, I almost want to put my avocado first, then it's going to be on top when I turn it upside down.
You got it. Absolutely. Yep.
Well, yes, I can do this, guys. All right. So while I get things moving on my end, I know that you were so gracious to chat with us about a topic that many in our society, many parents have encountered at some point, whether it's a family member themselves or whatnot. And so I'm really super interested in talking with you about your experience in navigating a divorce and how you went about that, what your journey looked like, and being able to navigate that at the same time being a parent and having someone else very much involved in that way. And so can you share a little bit about your story?
Absolutely. And it's such a it's such an invitation for compassion whenever we have conversations, like compassion for ourselves as well. And just recently, a few months back, so I grew up in a divorced household, like before it was cool. And I say that not very lightly, right? But I know, I'm 42, and sorry about that. I'm 42. And so, back in the late 80s, there wasn't another friend or peer that was in the similar situation of having to go to their fathers and things like that, so it was really important for me to have, my daughter in a family that stayed together. Well, that wasn't what happened, right? And so recently, probably about 2, 3 months ago, my daughter cornered me. I say that lovingly. And she said, Mama, if you didn't want me to grow up in a divorced family, why am I?
Oh, wow. Gosh, I imagine that hit hard.
Yeah. So I sent her to her room. No, I'm just kidding. So I grabbed her hands and I said, honey, it's because I didn't know what I know now.
Mm.
And sometimes wanting something different isn't enough to actually get something different. And so, I was in a very challenging marriage.
Mm.
And it took a great amount of strength because here's the thing too, right? Like I know that once I decide to leave, that this deeply affects our child. What I also know is staying in it deeply affects our child. And so how do you step away? And so what I did was, after we agreed, in a very hostile way, because This was then, and I'm a different person now, right? But I remember taking off my rings and feeling this great amount of peace because
Mm.
what I had dismissed for the last 7 years, probably more than that, was me. And so I very intentionally said to myself, I need to figure this girl out. I need to figure Tiffany out. So Tiffany doesn't show up like this again because this is not who I want to be. This is not where I want to be, you know? And how do I be vulnerable enough and compassionate enough with myself to also have some of this transfer to my daughter?
Hmm.
And it took a great amount of courage. And I know anybody who, dissolves a marriage, right? It takes a great amount of courage, hopefully, right? And within that, there's a lot of wounding, but also there's wounding in the relationship, you know? And so coming out of that and really just taking a deep, deep look at myself, was really, the most opportune thing that I could do in that moment because I didn't know who I was. I looked in the mirror and I was like,
Hmm.
that doesn't look like me. And so it was almost like all of this time I had not witnessed the the transformation that it played in my life.
Yeah.
And to really work that back. And something that was extremely difficult for me was knowing that I did the same thing that my parents did. And why? Instead of just saying, being the victim in it, like, of course I'm divorced because my parents were divorced. Like, no, what in there? Why? You know?
Mm.
And again, really working that back. And it was this most beautiful, it's been 6.5 years. And the transformation that I have made within myself, I mean, it's night and day. And it was because I had that intense need, desire, courage, I don't know how you want to say it, to go inwards, and realize, and something that's been very clear for me over the past year is, well, Tiffany, you spend a lot of time trying to please people. And I've been doing that for 41 years.
Hmm.
And so working that back has also been extremely powerful within my journey. Because if I look back at my marriage, what was I trying to do? I was trying to save somebody from themselves because I saw something different. I've always been able to see people's energies and their wounds. I didn't know it at the time. And so even as, a small child, my mom would be upset and I would do everything I could to take that away from her, just to show her, no, you're still great. You're still wonderful. You're still divine. And it never works because it's not mine to show. It's
Yeah.
not mine to try to heal. And so I spent most of my life doing just that. And it's okay because I didn't know something I know now, but I know something different now. And I know that I matter. And I know that, stepping into that has showed my daughter something very similar, right?
Hmm.
That we can choose differently, that we can choose ourselves, and that we can choose love. And that's not what I could have showed her in that relationship at all.
Wow. Can you say a little bit more about that? Because what I love that you just hit on there is kind of choosing myself. And so I work with a lot of folks who, when they get to that point, some of the narrative that is a big old block for them is choosing myself is equivalent to selfishness. And this idea that if I am selfish, I'm bad. I'm a bad parent. And so, can you say more? Was that something that you encountered? And what was your journey kind of navigating that particular narrative?
I had, in the throes of separation, I had met with a healer, and this was very new to me. This whole, I was always connected to something deeper, but I couldn't put words to it, And something that she said to me was, you're not helping yourself, and you're certainly not helping your daughter. And that was really hard for me to hear because I thought that I was, all intentional and all, this very intentional parent, and I was. But when we take a look at what selfish actually is, we use it in a very negative tone. Yes, it can be a very negative tone, but most of us are programmed to see it as only negative. Whereas, no, no, no. Sometimes we need to selfishly choose in the best way possible ourselves, our boundaries. right? And to stop giving so much of ourselves. We, especially women, we're taught to be in a corner, mind your P's and Q's, and just give to everyone. Well, that's great.
Yeah.
But we matter so much more than that. And most of us are walking through life with our eyes kind of shut because we're disconnected from ourselves. And so it really does take that, sword in the sand, like I don't know how else to put it, right? That really important moment in our life where we go, no, I flip and
Hmm.
matter too. Like I matter. I matter. And so how do I show up? Because most of the time we don't think that our children see us. Like I was on this podcast with this woman and and I say this with so much love because I feel like this
Mm.
is a general conversation that most of us have. And she said, oh, it was a new work environment. We were getting to know each other. And so everyone said, what do you do for fun? And she says, me and this other mom, she says, we were like, well, we raise children.
Yeah.
And in her mind, that was it. Well, I'm just here to raise children. And it wasn't the place or space for me to offer my opinion. And so I share it with you all because we love our children. But when we show them that we don't matter, they're going to
Hmm.
show up in that same energy. And that's a hard thing for us as moms to really see. So when we dismiss ourselves, when we don't make time for self-care, we're actually taking from our own cup. Therefore, we don't even have enough to give to our children authentically. And it's really important for us,
Hmm.
as moms, as human beings, to really fill our cup first, especially as moms, because our children are watching. We do not teach our children anything. We model.
Yeah, can you say for you, yeah, I have an idea, and I have a similar mantra, if you will, but for for you, what is the difference then? How is teaching versus modeling different? And what is the impact that maybe you've seen firsthand with your own child?
Yeah, I mean, so when we go to teaching, it kind of takes me to this older sort of paradigm where it's like,
Hmm.
no, bad. You don't do that. You can't talk to people like that. You can't talk to elders like that. And you're going, well, wait a minute. That's not equitable. Why should somebody who's 30 years older than me get to speak differently to me than I am to them? Isn't relationships
Yeah.
about giving and receiving? And that gets really lost when it comes
Hmm.
to children. I see children, I see my daughter as being the difference between her and I is 34 years, period.
Hmm.
I have 34 more years of experience than she does. That is our difference. And so I look at parenting as a
Yeah.
collaboration. And I know that that gets a little, um, it's not something that we often hear, right?
Hmm.
But I know that I model for my daughter all of the time. Guess what? She models for me too.
Mm.
She loves when we pick up trash. I do it when she's not around because I know that it makes a difference for her, right? And I'll share that with her. She loves when we pull up to a stop sign and somebody's looking for money. I always make sure I have cash in the car. It is not mine to judge whether she wants to
Hmm.
give them money or not. She rolls down her little money window and she hands them money every time because we're modeling for each other. And so if you want your children to show up in authenticity and honesty, you have to show up in authenticity and honesty right along with them, or else it doesn't connect a circuit, right? If your children are dishonest,
Yeah.
it might be an invitation for you to look at, where am I dishonest to them? What am I modeling for them? Where am I dishonest to myself? Because children highlight everything within us. They are our greatest teachers. They are our hardest teachers. They will poke you in ways you've never been poked before, right? But if we can hold ourselves in a space and place of compassion and say, what is this? Why is my child? Why is this activating something within myself? What is the message here? And what is the lesson? Because I promise if you show up in vulnerability with your child in a way that's truly unconditional, they will do the same back to you because you're modeling it for them.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really one of the most important aspects. And I unintentionally said it was this conditional versus
Mm.
unconditional love. We often think as our love is unconditional for our children, but I really,
Hmm.
I really want to elicit this feeling of if we don't love ourselves wholly and completely, we cannot love others outside of that. And so if we are not fully grounded and rooted, and maybe not fully,
Yeah.
right? We don't have to be fully, but we really want to come with ourselves or come to ourselves with a space and place of compassion and not judgment. If we can do that, then the love outside of ourselves will feel that as well and be connected within that,
Hmm.
right? A lot of us are very codependent. And so the love that we express outside of ourselves is that fearful love, right? Like if you hear all the time, and I say this with such kindness, but parents will post pictures of their kid in tears and how come the time won't stop and all of this. I hear you, but maybe it's an invitation to be more in the moment because your children are going to evolve same as you. How do we support them along their journey? Well, we can if we're not supporting ourselves along that journey. And I think that that's what kids are really here to show us is how to come back to ourselves because it's an extension.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to just circle back to something that you mentioned as far as that love, because I think there are so many folks, that will say, well, I'm doing all these things for my kids. Of course, I'm loving them. Like, this is, like you said, unconditional. It's about unconditional love. What do you mean, Tiffany, that I'm not fully able to love my kids if I don't love myself? Can you say a little bit more about that? Because I think that's such a paradigm shift for many that I've
Mm.
heard of. And so I'd love for you to kind of say a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and again, it comes with such gentleness and love and compassion, right? It's not to suggest that you don't love your children if you don't love yourself. It is to suggest that the love that you're sharing outside of yourself may not be as aligned with you because we have to feel it within first to know what unconditional love truly is. We have to have it within ourselves.
Mm.
And again, we can take the steps for it and watch relationships transform,
Yeah.
right? Because our children are their own autonomous little beings. And a lot of times it's our fear that stops their own autonomy. Well, they can't act like this now. Well, because I have to teach them. No, you don't. Your child is probably not going to want to wear a costume at 16 years old. It's okay if they're 2 years old in the grocery store, right?
Mm.
And if we can allow our children to be autonomous, it's a huge invitation for us to do the same, and to show up in vulnerability. My favorite thing to tell my daughter is, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do here.
Yeah, right?
I have no idea. What do you think we could do? Right? And really help because this is a collaboration.
Mm.
And I know if I don't take the time for myself, I cannot expect my daughter to do the same. If I don't show up in love, I can't expect her to do the same because she doesn't, again, there's 34 years that are different between us. So I can love myself more and show her that. Show her boundaries, show her all of these things,
Hmm.
We have every opportunity to do it, but we have to come back home first. And so to truly love those around us is to truly love what's within us.
Wow. And it sounds like there from, it starts, like you said, even at the beginning here, starting with that self-compassion and that self-love. And it sounds like even a little bit of grace for ourselves, a little bit of humility as well, but that it allows us so much more than, it's, imagine how much we're loving our kids now. If we're able to kind of access that extra love for ourselves, it sounds like almost like next level. If we're talking video games, which my boys are very into video games, so that all
Hmm.
that's all that I hear. But kind of unlocking that next level of really being able to pour into them, maybe in a way that we kind of envision that maybe quite can't fully we can't quite fully access. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm brought to this because I know that us as parents, right? If we follow this culture of do, 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 well, I have to have my children in all of the sports. I have to have my children in all of the things because they have to go to college and they have to do all of these things because I didn't get to do them and I need to show them that it's okay. Whoa, 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 right? So I tell my daughter, right? She's 8, and I say, you can pick 2 sports to play a year. And I only choose 2 because I tell her, because my time matters too. And if I'm
Yeah.
constantly every weekend bringing you someplace, I am completely dismissing myself, and she's not going to know how to show up for herself if I don't show up for myself. And so I say,
Yeah.
no, during the school year, we play two sports. We're going to have a break. You get to choose what sports and what seasons. I'll help you with that. But it's only two because I matter too. And guess what? So do you. Because we often take our
Hmm.
kids' downtime away from them because we don't know what to do, because we don't know how to feel good inside. We don't know how to pause. And so downtime for us is like, okay, now what do we got to do? We got to do the next best thing. I don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
We have to model that for our children too. And I think that again, that goes back to that. Our children are going to be great. They're going to play sport. They're going to be smart. All of our children are all of these things. But if we only show them, if we only highlight for them how smart they are and how good they are at sports, it's a really tough life that they have to
Hmm.
work back. Our responsibility as a parent, I feel, is to see them as their autonomous little beings and help to enhance that within them while guiding them. Because yes, we do have to say no. We do have to be the one that says, like, actually, no, we're not going to run out in traffic, right?
Yeah.
They get that. You know what I mean? And if we can cultivate, a lot of times, especially teenagers, they don't want to talk to their parents. Why? Do you not offer them that space? So often we need to fill in the blanks. Our child comes home and says, I have a bad day. And we go, why? Oh my gosh, it wasn't that bad. It's okay. It was just him being this, or it's okay. And we talk over them
Hmm.
unintentionally because it's our own wounding. We don't allow them to feel what they're feeling unintentionally because it's our own wounding. And so we go into fix it mode with our children. Our children don't need us to fix it. They need somebody with them, somebody, a wise elder,
Yeah.
right? To take their hands and to walk through it. What is your experience? I can't know if you don't share it with me,
Hmm.
right? What does it look like when somebody says this to you? Where did you feel it in your body? Such different questions than it's okay, it won't be that big of a deal. They're just doing that because they like you, right? No. How can we honor their autonomy? Because when
Mm.
they're out of our nest, how are they going to be if we've done everything for them, if we've felt their feelings for them?
Yeah. And what I really appreciate in what you're saying, it sounds like you're saying at least, is that when they come to us, yes, many times there's that instinct to fix because we see pain, like you said, whether it's activating our own wounds, and it can feel uncomfortable. And when we see that discomfort, it can be uncomfortable to see it in our children struggling through something that we wish so deeply, wish we could take that away and make it better because then it wouldn't feel so uncomfortable. And we know the discomfort because we felt it ourselves. And gosh, to sit in your skin with all of that, especially like you said, that it's not something that's been modeled before, that you've had the space to cultivate and figure out what it's like to be in my body when I'm experiencing something so big, so uncomfortable, because it's really requiring me to kind of look somewhere that's really scary, you know? And then to, that instinct of wanting to fix it, it sounds like kind of acknowledging it's coming from a place that we're not sitting in that kind of, how can I screw up my kids? And then it's really like, how could I, we're not sitting there going, how can I pass this generational trauma? But really kind of from that piece of this is uncomfortable, how can I make it better? Because of that part of wanting to just alleviate, because gosh, I know how much it hurts for me. I don't want you to experience that. But it almost sounds like when we don't allow them to experience that and to sit with them in a way that it sounds like, approaching it with that curiosity, that non-judgmental, just, hey, this is a space that we can share, even the ugliest. It isn't going to take away from who you are, your worth, your value, that it actually does allow them the opportunity to get to that healing on a more permanent level, a more maybe useful for the future level than just an immediate, oh, I've alleviated it for that short blip. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because our children are constantly learning, they're little sponges. I mean, we are too. We just often don't see it the same way,
Yeah.
as children do. And how they are now is really a testament to how they can be. because it's not always, right? There are people who claw their way back, from really terrible things and step out. I like to think that I do know that I had a very difficult childhood and a very difficult, adulthood,
Hmm.
but here I am.
Hmm.
And I've changed. So I know that it doesn't necessarily, you don't have to be raised this way, right? But if we can bring in a little bit of compassion for ourselves and vulnerability and share that with our children, and that looks like something simple as, hey, I don't really know what's going on with me today, but I'm not really treating you or treating myself
Yeah.
the way feels good for me. And I'm very sorry about that. I'm going to do everything I can to work on that for myself. So I apologize, for your experience if I've hurt you in any way, right? And watch as they bring that back to you.
Hmm.
I can tell you that, this was a couple months ago when my daughter slammed the door and she opened it back up about a minute later and she said, Mama, I'm so sorry. She said, I was just
Wow.
having some big feelings there. I recognize that now and I apologize. Wow.
Wow.
Huge, huge. At 7 years old, you can do that. What does that mean for the rest of your life?
Hmm.
Because you've had a safe place to do it. That's the other thing too. And this is what I tell my daughter. I'm safe. So if you mean no, tell me no, because right? Her and I have a very deep bond. And so I say, I'm a safe place. So feel free to try out your nose on me just to see how they feel, right?
Hmm.
Because she often wants to tell me yes, but I'm like, no, no, no. Sometimes you got to tell mama no so that it's okay to say it to other people because I'm going to be that safe place for you. And I think we really, it's such a beautiful way to experience it. We are a safe place for our children. So if we cannot hold space for them, then not only are their relationships going to be affected either way, right? I don't want to say it's positive or negative
Yeah.
because I don't believe that, but we're influencing all of their future relationships by being their parent. And we know it to be true because we can all look back at our wounds of our child. We're never going to see our children the way they want us to see them. We're never going to say all of the things. Cool. You don't have to. You show up with compassion and vulnerability and apologize. And you don't ever have to hold yourself to that standard because you're in a collaboration with your child.
What I wanted to get into a little bit, if it's okay with you, because I heard you a couple times say an apology to our children and to collaborating with them. And now this is, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I know especially I see it more often than not, especially in the older generations, this idea of no way in the world am I going to apologize to my children. They're children, I'm not going to collaborate with them. And so I'm really curious for you, how were you able to get to that space and to that ability to look at someone, like you said, your 7-year-old kid, and say, you are worth an apology. You are worth me collaborating with you. I want to hear your opinions. I want to hear your thoughts because they have space. They have, it sounds like validity versus, again, maybe what prior generations would kind of almost, oh, no, 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 I'm not, I don't need to apologize to you. You're a kid.
And that's gone. Those old paradigms, they didn't serve us then and they don't now. And so when it comes to an apology, and this is why your children can also be super safe for you, especially when they're young, right? When you apologize to them, they wholly and completely accept you. Sorry, they just do. Your partner, not so much, right? They may not in that moment, but your children, go to them and apologize for something,
Yeah.
get on their level, and watch how they shift. Watch how tender
Mm.
they become because you're modeling something for them. Unconditional love, right? And so the ego often doesn't want us to apologize. Practice on your children because they will accept you and receive you all of the
Mm-hmm.
times. All of the times. I was just with this woman and she's really, really recognizing how much of her daughter's life, a lot of the challenges she faces was because of how she parented, right? She's 16. So she said, I felt called. I wrote my daughter a letter of apology and
Wow.
she handed it to her. She said it was one of the most tender moments. And I said, do you know what
Yeah.
you just did for yourself and for your daughter?
Mm.
She can move past all of what you consider to be a wrongdoing to her because you opened up that space and place of forgiveness for her and for yourself. And so when we can apologize, we're also forgiving ourselves, right? We're never going to speak to our children in all the ways that we want to. We're going to snap, right? But we need to hold ourselves accountable in that, you know? and have that compassion and forgiveness within ourselves. I don't know if I think about the way that I,
Yeah.
raised my daughter from newborn to now, there are things that I would do differently, but I didn't know something then that I know now. And so, should I hold that space as shame and guilt, or do I move forward? I let it go because it doesn't serve me. I didn't know something. I know something different now. I know how to apologize to my daughter. It has fostered all of these other relationships with which I apologize for, because the other thing that is so wildly important is when we
Mm.
apologize, we're apologizing for somebody else's experience, which is something we don't know anything of, right? And if we can apologize, if we understand that you and I are having two different experiences and we're having a collective experience. Right now, currently, we're having two different and one collective. We're on this podcast, right? But our minds are working in two different ways. I'm inspiring things in you, you're inspiring things with me. And so it's saying, hey, what was your experience like within that podcast? Right? I'm sorry for your experience if you felt that I was, not listening to you, not hearing you, or distracted. I can work to be better, and I just want to honor that.
Hmm.
That's a huge amount of leadership that comes through. And we help ourselves when
Yeah.
we do that. And even saying, listen, I apologize to myself too. You say that out loud, breathe that into existence. I apologize for what I didn't know. I know something different now. I get now that I was reactive. And I forgive myself, right? And you can ask your child, ask them for forgiveness. See if they forgive you. They will. They will forgive you, right?
Hmm.
But it's like that, that that hope and no, I don't think I say it right, but the hope and open open, it's to show up and say, I'm sorry, I love you, thank you, and please forgive me. If we can model our life by those four things, gosh, it just shifts. We hold ourselves accountable and we realize that we're imperfectly imperfect. We don't need judgment. We don't need shame. Those things don't serve us. You're only doing the best with what you know right in this very moment. And in a few moments, you know something different. So hold yourself accountable for it. It's so simple. It's not easy, and it does take some practice. So again, work on it with your children. Show up for them. You do it in the quiet stillness of nobody even has to see. Hey, I'm super sorry for acting the way that I did before. I'm going to do better. Do you forgive me?
Mm.
Oh, they'll forgive you every time. Same as if your child came up to you and said, Mama, listen, I'm so sorry for what I said to you earlier. Do you forgive me? You won't say no.
Yeah.
Right? Because they're showing up in vulnerability and compassion with themselves too, and they're ready to take
Hmm.
ownership. Our emotions are constantly flooding. We cannot, you know, oftentimes we don't realize when our nervous system is engaged until somebody spills the milk and we just explode,
Yeah. Right.
right?
Yeah.
That must have been scary for you. I'm so sorry. I didn't
Mm.
recognize something that I recognize now. I'm sorry for your experience. I imagine it was scary.
Hmm.
And ask questions, right? And just, hey, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do better. That's all, just better. Not the best. You're not going to fix it, but you can move forward and do better because now you know something, right?
Yeah, and what I love about that, it's almost this mindset shift that I heard you mention there, looking at an apology as a form of leadership versus an apology as a weakness. Because I know I've
Yeah.
heard so many people kind of equate apologies with weakness versus being able to have that shift of, gosh, what it takes to be able to get on their level and to apologize. And it shows, like you said, that leadership, that initiative, humility to be able to kind of move into that. And that in itself is such an antithesis of weakness. Weakness isn't that leadership, isn't about that ability to really kind of model going back and to tie it all together, right? To model that experience. And so I'm really, really curious for you, was that something that kind of forgiveness, that self-forgiveness, that compassion, something that you had to really discover through the divorce, and of that being again very different than maybe the plan that you had for yourself going into that? I mean, was that a journey that you had to walk through?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I'm so grateful to have that experience, as difficult as it was. I was able to illuminate the deepest parts of myself that really wanted some attention,
Mm-hmm.
that inner child in me that really deeply desired it, And so often we just go through our lives with our blindfolds on and just think it's going to get better. Or, when I get this will be better, or this new job, or this will be the right thing. No, no, no. It's always an invitation to come back
Mm.
home. Forgive yourself. You couldn't have done everything now the way you wanted to, It's like when you were 16 and you stole that thing. Well, yeah, you were 16 and you stole that thing. Is that who you are now? No,
Mm-hmm.
no. Forgive yourself. We often don't allow forgiveness in because we feel that guilt and shame we're attached to it. We're attached to the guilt and the shame. And that lowers our vibration. It lowers our authenticity. It lowers our humility. It lowers our vulnerability, So to come back to the heart and be like, yeah, I forgive you.
Yeah.
Of course I forgive you. It's so easy to forgive everybody else when we've made those strides to forgive ourselves. When we can hold a situation in our hands and say, there's something I didn't know here. Oh, I forgive you. I forgive you,
Mm-hmm.
I forgive you, I forgive you, I forgive you. In my energy healing, we have to spend a fair amount of time, in forgiveness. Your pinky is the one right to your heart. And so I say, okay, well, who do you need to forgive? I need to forgive myself. Yeah, you do. First, it's always the first person. It's always you to forgive first,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, such powerful words. And I think what I really appreciate you being willing to explore and to share is that it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but within this, you were able to experience something very different than maybe what many parents are maybe saying, I'm in this relationship isn't and it's not serving me, but my kids, how is it going to affect my kids? Am I going to damage them? Am I going to ruin them? And from your experience, it sounds like that it was this very, very different experience than maybe that dark, gloomy kind of narrative that some people get stuck in, and then by and large end up continuing on, as you mentioned, saying, oh, I'll just figure it out later. I'll do me later. It sounds like your experience was very different than that, that instead you've been able to still maintain putting your child in a space that she's still feeling loved and that she's able to thrive in. Am I hearing this correctly? Is that your experience?
Absolutely. Because when we stay in relationships that don't serve us, it affects our children. It models for our children, And a lot of times there's fear, right? There's fear because you've been together for X amount of time, you've built a life together, there's family. Yes, I get all of that, but
Yeah.
you matter. And if it doesn't feel good, you matter. And if it doesn't feel good to them, I promise you it doesn't feel good to the other person because a relationship is about having equitability. Do you know what I mean? And so, if you and
Mm-hmm.
I are best friends and I'm like, you know what, I'm really feeling like our friendship is kind of falling apart, you're not going to be like, "Whoa, really? I had no idea." You're like, "Yeah, I kind of felt the same." Right? Because we are always feeling something very similar in relationships that the other person is feeling. And so, by stifling that down, we're not showing up for ourselves. And then we become very fearful and codependent in how we express ourselves, especially through our children and our partners. And so it's really about, having that space and place to know that you are enough and you're going to get through it. You will get through it. You've gotten through it thus far. You will continue to get through it. The world is beautiful like that. When we show up for ourselves, we actually, it has a great amount of connectivity to show us how beautiful the world is because we've just been blocking it by dismissing ourselves, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, I'd love to ask you, were there any resources, anything you found on your journey that helped you navigate maybe or make it just a little bit easier that you would offer to anybody listening who is maybe sitting right about where you were in that?
The first thing was, I recognized, shortly after my divorce that I was chaos inside, that I didn't know what safety felt like. And
Mm.
so I was drawn to breathing. which is such a funny thing because we do it all the time. But I actually started Wim Hof breathing. And it's just, and I was like, oh, I do have the power to calm myself down because that's what I needed. I needed something to highlight for me that I can stop the chaos inside. That was me on my journey. And so I took to the breathing. And when things would get a little chaotic inside, I'd go right back to the breathing. And then throughout there, I just started to find more ways to enhance that stillness and peace within me, right?
Mm.
Nature, huge. Nature was huge for me. Getting out and backpacking, and nature to me is nothing but love. And so it really helps to show us how divine and infinite we all are and connected we all are through nature. I also went through, and learned energy healing. And I know it works because I have spent countless hours on healing the wounds of myself. I was just doing it this morning, right? I'm not healed
Mm-hmm.
and I won't be because my life is moving. It's a journey. But when something comes up for me and I become reactive, it's a space and place to get curious and say,
Yeah.
that keeps coming up for you, Tiffany. Maybe that's something that we can heal now. And so, learning how to transmute these energies
Mm-hmm.
in my own life, right? My own traumas and my own wounds, my own patterns, so that I can show up for myself because it matters to all my other relationships. And so breathing was wildly the first one, and
Mm-hmm.
finding that connection to nature to remember that we are grounded human beings, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it was just this invitation to really start to heal these wounds. I got into astrology, I got into nutrition. There's so many ways that we can find wellness within. We just have to find what works for us. And if this isn't something that you've experienced or explored before, well, this is why podcasting is such a beautiful space and place because we get to
Mm-hmm.
hear other stories. And you might not have listened to half of what I said, but maybe one thing you're like, oh, I'm actually going to try that. Beautiful, beautiful, because it's an invitation to come back to yourself at all times. Are you answering the call? I don't know. I don't know where you are in your journey. I'm not on your journey, but I send you so much love and compassion because we need all of that. We need all of that love and compassion within ourselves. And if we can amplify and radiate it throughout the world, all the better, all the better. But take a look at your life. And if you're showing up in your wounds and your traumas, your children will too. And it's okay because you get to do something different.
Yes. But it's not too late. Right?
No, no, that's not a thing.
Okay, so my last question for you, because I'm a big Back to the Future fan. If you had access to a DeLorean and could go back, is there anything that you would offer yourself that you would tell yourself that you can offer now to anybody listening?
I would go back to, I'm going to say 3, 4 years old, maybe 7, because I feel like we have a little bit more awareness. And I would kneel down in front of my 7-year-old self and tell her she's enough.
Mm.
I would tell her that what she's feeling is big and just to stay with it because all of these lessons you'll come to this greater understanding as you travel through with love and wisdom. But just know that you are enough now. And that's what I would tell her.
Oh, I love that so much. Well, Tiffany, so I'm going to blend this and I'm so excited to try it. And I've got my kids, we'll get them some too. And uh, so
Good.
thank you so much for being willing to share your story, share some of your experience and some of the things that you've learned with me and anybody who's listening. Like you said, that maybe just one thing that struck home, and really hit home for them that they're able to take. And so I do really thank you, Tiffany. That's the mission, that's the hope that this podcast is, that somebody's who's walking through parenthood, which is not as easy, as you've mentioned, can feel a little less lonely, even if it's just for a fraction of the time. And that we're all going through hard, and we can do something different, and we can give back to ourselves, and that it doesn't make it us a bad parents, right? Um, so just because it looks a little bit different than all of those kind of perfect parent things that are out there.
Right. And there is no
Yeah,
perfect
and there
parent.
there is no
That's
perfect
illusion.
parent, you're right.
Thank you for the space in which to really share from the heart. I really, truly appreciate it. You're just a gracious and wonderful host. So thank you, Reesa.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you all for tuning in. We will see you next time. If you or anyone that you know is struggling with any of the topics that we discussed in today's episode, make sure to check out our show notes for support and resources. You can get help. Thanks again for joining us on today's episode of The Real Family Eats. If you're a parent ready to share your real life parenting story, make sure to reach out to us in our website found in the show notes. And that goes for today's recipe, social medias, support, and resources. All of that can be found in our show notes. So make sure to check them out. And make sure to follow, like, share, subscribe, and stay up to date on all things The Real Family Eats. I hope you'll join us next time for more food for thought and thoughtful food. Enjoy your eats.